Welcome to today's math lesson on finding the rate of change or the slope from graphs. We have, for this due now, Henry and Mara went to the store to buy a 2-liter soft drink bottle. The graph below represents the cost of 2 liters soft drink bottles. Find the rate of change between A and B. And so there's two ways that we could have solved this problem. The first way is to find our rate of change by counting the units that we moved up and to the right. So I'm going to start with that way. So our change in our y, if each of these boxes on the y-axis or each of the lines represent 1, is 1, 2, 3, 4. So our change in y is 4. And then our change in x, each of these boxes or each of these lines represent 1. So our change of x values is 4. So we have 4 over 4. If we were to divide 4 divided by 4, we get 1. So that means that our rate of change, or a constant of proportionality, since this is a proportional relationship, given that it's a straight line that goes to the origin, is 1. The second way that we could have solved this is looking at the coordinates of A and B. So first, let's identify that. The coordinate of B is 4, 4. And the coordinate of A is 8, 8. And since we can see that it is a proportional relationship, we can just divide our y value by our x value. So we have 4 divided by 4, which of course is 1, and then 8 divided by 8, which is 1. Our take for today is 8.4c, and our lesson target is that scholars will use data from a graph to determine the rate of change or slope in mathematical and real-world problems. Our DOL is given 4 problems. Scholars will use data from a graph to determine the rate of change or slope in math and real-world problems with 100% accuracy. This problem reads, the depth of the water in a tank was 5 feet. Gerald started draining water out of the tank at a constant rate as shown by the graph below. What is the slope of the line? What is the equation of the line in y equals mx plus b form? So as we can see from this graph right here, this is a non-proportional relationship because it does not go through the origin and it has a y-intercept. So our y-intercept is at 5 right here. And so in our equation, b is what is used to what we're going to change once we find out what the y-intercept is. So since we know that the y-intercept is 5, we're going to write y is equal to whatever mx plus 5 is. And it's plus 5 because the y-intercept is at positive 5. If the y-intercept was at negative 5, it'd be minus 5. Then we have to find another point on this line to find the slope from. So I know that this is not a good point, this is a good point, but I'm not going to choose it. This is not a good point, this is a good point right here. And so I'm going to find my slope. So to do that, I need to find my change in y over my change in x. So from here to here, from 5 to 4, I had to subtract 1. Another way to think about this is that we've been going up and to the right. So when we go up, it's going to be positive, but when we're going down, our slope or our constant of proportionality, in this case, in this case, it's our slope, but also known as the rate of change, is -1. And then from here to here, from noon to 2 p.m., 2 hours have passed. So our change in our x values is 2. So our slope is -0.5. So we can either write the equation as y is equal to half x plus 5, or we can write it in decimal form. Y is equal to 0.5x plus 5. And to answer the question, what is the meaning of the slope and the y-intercept of the line according to this situation? Our slope is telling us that our depth of water in the tank is decreasing, so it's going down by half a foot every hour. And it started, and our y-intercept is telling us that the depth of the tank started at 5 feet. This problem says the graph below shows the rate at which a machine is bottling milk in gallons per second. Find the unit rate/slope, y-intercept, and equation. So right off the bat, looking at this graph right here, we can see that our y-intercept is at the origin. And in this case, we wouldn't call it slope. We'd call it constant of proportionality since it is a proportional relationship. It's a straight line that goes to the origin. And so I'm going to choose my origin as one of my points that I'm going to identify my slope from. I know that this is not a good point, this is not a good point, this is not a good point, this is a good point right here. This right here could be misleading because it looks like it might be at the intersection of the blue grid lines, but it's actually a little bit above. So the next thing I'm going to identify is what each unit on the x-axis and y-axis represents. What is the value? So as you can see, if this is 0, this is 10 right here, and there's 5 boxes in between them, that means that each box has to represent 2. So this would be 0, this would be 2, this would be 4, this would be 6, this would be 8. And then it looks like our y-axis has the same units of measurement. Sometimes it is, or not the same units, but each box represents the same value of 2. Since this is 0, this is 10, and there's 5 boxes in between them. So this would be 0, this would be 2, this would be 4, this would be 6, this would be, so this is 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. I know I kind of wrote it like squished together. And now we have to find our change in y over our change in x. So in terms of our change in y, if this is 0 and this is 6, our change in y was 6. And then our change in x, if this is 0 and this is 8, our change in x values was 8, so we have 6 over 8. To simplify this, I'm going to list out the factors of 6 and 8. So the factors of 6 are 2 times 3. The factors of 8 are 2 times 4. The common factor is 2. So we're going to cross it out. So that means that 6 over 8 can be simplified to 3 over 4. And now that I have my slope, I can write my equation. Since it's a proportional relationship, it's always going to be in the form of y is equal to k times x. So my equation is going to be y is equal to 3/4 times x, or if I were to write this as a decimal, I divide the 3 divided by the 4, and I would get 0.75. So my equation would be y is equal to 0.75x. This next IG problem has a storm is raging on Misty Mountain. The graph shows the constant rate of change that oil is pumped. And we have to find the slope as well as find the equation in the form y is equal to k times x. So I've identified 3 different points. I have 0, 0, 2, 4, 4, 8. And the x values, 0, 2, and 4, are reflected in the left side of the table, and the y values 0, 4, and 8 are reflected in the right side of the table. And so I'm going to find my change in y. If this is 0, this is 5, and there's 5 boxes in between, I know that each box represents 1. So I know that from here to here would be a change of 4, and we're going up, so it's positive 4. And then from here to here, I know is a change of 2 in our x values, since each of the units down here represents 1. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. And since it's a proportional relationship, my equation is going to be y is equal to 2 times x, or 2x. Okay, for this IG problem, it says Carla sells greeting cards. The graph models a linear relationship between the number of boxes of cards she sells and her profit. Find the slope of the line, find the equation of the line in the form y is equal to k times x. So this equation tells us that this is a proportional relationship. We can also see on the graph that this is proportional since it's a straight line that goes through the origin. We can see that our x values are being counted by 1, but our y values are being counted by tens because it's 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. So we have to be aware of that when we're finding our slope. So to find our slope, we have to find our change in y over our change in x. So I can always use the origin as a point to find my slope from. This is not a good point. This is not a good point. This is not a good point. This is a good point right here. And now I have to figure out how many units I'm going up or down. In this case, I'm going up. And I'm going up only 3 boxes, but its value is 30, since each box represents 10. Then my change in x is going to be 4, since I moved over 4 boxes and each box represents 1 on the x-axis. When I divide 30 divided by 4, I get 7.5. So my equation would be y is equal to 7.5x. We're going to do this Ouija problem. It says a company sells bottles of vitamin capsules. The graph shows a linear relationship between the cost per capsule in cents and the number of bottles ordered. What is the slope of the line that models the situation? And find the equation of the line in the form y equals mx plus b. So this equation tells us that this is a non-proportional relationship. And from looking at this line right here, we can see that it doesn't go through the origin, so it has to be non-proportional. And it looks like it would be a straight line if a line were to connect all the points. So I'm not going to choose this point because it's hard to approximate. It looks like it would be 1, 65, but we can't be sure. So I'm going to choose a point that's at an intersection. So I'm using this one right here. And then I'm going to use this one. And looking at the x and y axis, along our x-axis, we're counting by 1. So each box or each line represents 1. And along our y-axis, we're counting by 10. So each box or each line represents 10. From this first point to the second point, we're going down. So we know that our change in y is going to be negative. So to find our slope, we're finding our change in y over our change in x. So our change in y is going to be negative 10. Because right here is at 60 and right here is at 50. So 60 minus 50 is 10, and since we went down, it's negative. Then our change in our x, if this is 2 and this is 4, is 2. So we have negative 10 divided by positive 2, which is negative 5, and that is our slope. So now we have to write our equation in the form y is equal to mx plus b. We don't know what our y-intercept is. We can estimate or guesstimate that it would be around 70, but let's go ahead and check to make sure. So we're going to write our equation with our slope. So we have y is equal to negative 5x plus b, since we don't know what that y-intercept is. And from here, I'm going to choose one of the points. So I'm going to choose this point right here. This is 2, 60. And I'm going to plug in the values, the x and y values, into this equation to solve for our y-intercept. So I'm going to rewrite the point up here, 2, 60. Two is our x value, and 60 is our y value. So using this equation, instead of writing y, I'm going to write the 60. So I have 60 is equal to negative 5 times our x is 2, plus b. Then we have 60 is equal to negative 5 times 2 is negative 10, plus b. And we can either think negative 10 plus what number makes 60, or we can think what is the opposite of negative 10, or subtracting by 10? It's adding by 10, or positive 10. So we're going to add by 10 on both sides. 60 plus 10 is 70. And then negative 10 plus positive 10 is 0, so we can cross it out. So we have b is equal to 70. So our y-intercept is equal to 70. So our guesstimation was actually correct. So combining this y-intercept information as well as our slope information, we're going to write our equation. So we have y is equal to negative 5x plus 70. And we're adding 70 because our y-intercept is at positive 70. If it was at negative 70, we'd subtract 70. For this I do problem, it says triangle PSV is shown on the coordinate grid. The coordinates of each vertex of the triangle are integers. Find the slope of the three sides. So the slope of PV and VS, or I guess the change in Y would be given by PV and the change in X would be given by SV. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So from P to S, we're trying to find our slope. And so we're going to start by finding our change in Y. So if this is 6 right here and this is 2, the difference, 6 minus 2 is 4. And then our change in X, if this is 1 and this is 5, 5 minus 1, the difference is 4. So our change in Y was 4, our change in X is 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. But the one thing that we can't forget is that when we went from P to S, we didn't just go up 4, we went down 4. So it actually needs to be negative 4. And if it's negative 4 divided by positive 4, our slope is going to be negative 1 instead of positive 1, which means that for every x value, we're going down 1 unit. So for example, from here to here, we went down 1 unit. From here to here, we went down 1 unit and 1 unit to the right. From here to here, we went down 1 unit and 1 unit to the right. And from here to here, we went down 1 unit and 1 unit to the right. Now it's time for your DOL. It's in a Google form and it's 4 questions. Thank you so much for following along in today's math lesson, and see you in the next math video. Bye.